voice, have you ever played a prank on anybody?
Yes.
Could you tell us, please?
Well, I've ordered fast food before using some of the voices. The worst thing that ever happened, though, it was unintentional, completely unintentional. I was in a toy aisle at a Toys R Us, and there was a little kid who was looking, I think it was at a Green Goblin toy when Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man was very popular at the time. And this little boy was picking up one of the Green Goblin toys, and I came up behind him, and I went, "Oh, so you don't like the spider either?" And the little kid looked at me and he goes, and the lady came over to me and started swatting me. "Get away from my child!" And I said, "No, I do the voice." And I thought she was going to call the police, and it was. I never did it again. It was awful. It was just awful. The other thing that I used to do when I would go to Disneyland, they would have the characters walking around in the suits, and I would come up behind Goofy in particular, and I would go, "Lars, you're looking pretty good today, fella." And you see this guy in this big head, you know, and he's turning around and he can't see me, and I'm behind him the whole time, just moving back and forth. And I would just torture the poor guy throughout the day. You know, every time I would see him, I'd come up behind him. "There's Mick! Look out!" And so that was great fun. So I feel really sorry for the guy who was in that outfit. He's probably sweating already, and he probably peed himself or something. I don't know. Anyway, so that's kind of fun to do.
Just down here.
Hi.
This works. I have a question on Rescue Bots. For me, it seems like it's a kiddie show, but it seems that it was very intelligently written, and it actually had those really tense moments that I didn't expect for a kids show. And I wanted your thoughts on that. I also wanted to know which episode, which parts of it did you prefer playing, and if you know something about a second season. Thank you.
Well, I'm not allowed to talk about another season. I love Rescue Bots, and the cast, I don't know if you guys follow me on Twitter, but the cast, and we're very, very close. We actually do stuff together as friends, too. So I love the writing. Nicole Dubuque is one of the writers, and she's a great friend of mine. I told her that I would give a shout out for her particularly. So, Nicole, I love you. YouTube, if you're looking at this on YouTube. Anyway, they put a lot of heart into this show, and for a kid's show, you're right. The writing is intelligent. It doesn't speak down to children. The storylines are meaningful, and the characters are hilarious. I think the characters are hilarious. I can't really speak to any particular episode. I did love the Flobsters, I have to say, just because they were so random. And anything that Blade says just cracks me up. He's just the cutest, funniest little character. And Chase, of course, DC Douglas, he's sick. The man is sick. But yeah, oh my God. Yeah, we posted, for those of you who have not seen Twitter, go onto Twitter and check out the post that DC Douglas just did. We just did a video together, and it gives kind of a wrap-up of how we interact with each other on the whole cast, and it's very wrong, and not necessarily for children, so for a children's show to do that. But actually, that's the funny thing about the children's shows, is that the craziest, filthiest humor comes out in the room that you'll never see on the show. But it's a way of expressing ourselves where we're able to put all that heart into it. Maurice LaMarche, who you guys might know from Pinky and the Brain and many, many other things. He's the brain on that. He's a brilliant, brilliant actor. And Maurice is one of these guys who doesn't have to hang out with us. He's one of these veterans, and he kind of goes on to his own thing. But he has embraced this group of young actors. There's a lot of brand new actors on the show as his family. And he shows up to everything. And for him to do that, it really speaks a lot about the heart of the show itself. So I'm very proud to be a part of that. I love that show. So thank you.
Excellent. Just over here.
Hi.
Hi.
Spike from Bebop.
Yes.
It's one of your roles that you've been most famous for and popular for. Could you tell me the story behind it?
A story behind Spike?
Yeah, how you got the role and everything.
Well, I auditioned for Spike like anything else. I went into a studio and auditioned probably with 30 or 40 other guys, and they chose me for the role. I don't know why, but I'm very grateful that they did. And the interesting thing about playing Spike is that I had no idea how big that series would become. I had worked on several other anime series prior to that, and none of them really had exploded like Bebop did. But everybody in the room who was working on that, I guess it had already been out in Japan, and they said that it was achieving massive success there. And they said that this was going to be the next big anime in America. This will be like the gateway for a lot of people to get into anime. And I was going, yeah, okay, that's really nice to hear, but I'm just happy to be here. I'm happy to be in the room. But the attention to detail that they put in that show, there was something very special about it from the very beginning, to the point where, pardon me? And the music, oh my God, Yoko Kanno, the music and the visuals and the storytelling and the humor of that show and the film noir sort of feel to it. It just had all these incredible elements that made it so palatable to people all over the world, where a lot of the anime were very specific to a Japanese audience or people that are familiar with a Japanese mentality. That show crossed all boundaries, and music from all over the world too. And the other thing is that like I was saying, the attention to detail, to the point where every time that Spike had a cigarette in his mouth, the director, even though I didn't smoke, she would bring cigarettes and she would hand me a cigarette, and I would have to have a cigarette in my mouth while I was doing it. In fact, at that time, before we had the smartphones, I had one of those big books where I wrote down my calendar in it. I would keep a cigarette in there, and every single session it would just be mashed, and I would have tobacco all over everything. It would be pouring out on the floor when I'd open it up. She'd have to give me a brand new one each time. But that was kind of a happy memory from the show, because it really does speak to the detail of that, and it plays through. Even now, 14 years later, people still love that show. It's amazing. And it's coming out on Blu-ray finally. So, yeah, thank you.
Just over here.
Oh.
Hello, Steve.
Hi.
More so with Starscream and your other Transformers roles, did you have any idea of what you wanted? Because he was known for being a bit of a snake, and when I first heard that Starscream in the first episode, one word crossed my mind, and that was Orochi.
It was what?
Orochi.
Orochimaru?
Yes.
Oh yes, Orochimaru. Yeah, we started with him a little bit like that. I think we started softer, and we eventually went from this down to this. Where Orochimaru did do that. You are right. For those of you who are not familiar with Orochimaru, he was this snake-like character from a show called Naruto, an anime. And he could throw up snakes, he could throw up swords. He was this really creepy, disgusting character who would take over people's bodies. But that creepy side from Orochimaru did work really well with Starscream, so I think there is an element of that in there. I don't know if we intentionally did that, but I'm sure he snuck in there somewhere. It's a good observation. Nobody's mentioned that before. It's interesting. Okay, over here.
Sorry.
Oh, hi.
First off, all hail Starscream.
Thank you.
Isn't that Lord?
Lord Starscream.
That's all right. I'm giving you a pass.
Have there ever been any memorable, funny moments when you've done any recording sessions?
Many, 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 yes. One of the most memorable, ridiculous moments that we had was Darren Norris, who plays Knockout. He would sit next to me, and one day we were having a scene where Starscream was actually broken down and emoting, and it was really a hard moment, a very sensitive moment for him. And, I was sort of summoning that thing and going into that deep place. And I looked next to me, and Darren has some string cheese that he had ripped in half, and he had one half stuck up each nostril. And I look over at him, and he's going, the cheese is swinging back and forth. And I just lost it. I couldn't speak for the next 5 minutes or so. It was just unbelievable. And these guys, we do that to each other in the room all the time. We try to crack each other up. Kevin Michael Richardson, who plays Bulkhead, is one of the funniest humans on the planet, and he will pretend he's shooting himself. If a scene is going too long or we're having too many takes, he'll just sit there in his chair and just go, It's stuff like that happens in the booth, and I can't even do it the way he does it. Or Frank Welker and Peter Cullen. will launch into impressions, and they'll do a whole skit for 20 minutes, and literally the whole room will shut down because everybody in the room is so mesmerized by them as actors and as people and the legends that they are that we all turn into little fangirls, and we just sit there and watch and laugh and cry, and it's wonderful. It's really a wonderful room to be in.
Just wondering, is Frank still terrorizing the technical team with machine-breaking sound effects, things like that?
Frank is so funny. The first time I worked with him was on Scooby-Doo. I worked on an iteration of it called What's New Scooby-Doo. And he was playing Scooby and Freddy at the time. And we were getting ready to record, and it was a big room. We probably had 12 people in the room, microphones all around. It was a Warner Brothers Studios. There's a lot of money is being spent on this. And Frank is sitting there, and you hear this sound, and you don't know where it's coming from, and it's like, and it sounds like gas escaping. And the engineer is going out of his mind trying to figure out where it's coming from. And he's not moving his mouth. He's no expression on his face. He's just sitting there like a Buddha, and you just hear it coming out. And all of a sudden, you look over at Frank, and he's going. And he'll do these little sounds, and he torments the engineers and the directors all the time. And he'll do cricket sounds. He'll do sounds of squealing gears. So the engineers just go crazy. But once they realize it's him, they forgive him. If any of us did it, we'd get in so much trouble. We'd probably get fired. Yeah.
Over here.
Hello.
Hello.
My question is, in regards to voicing Spike from Cowboy Bebop and Vincent from Dirge of Cerberus, how do you get those voices to be so gravelly and awesome?
By screaming at my children? No, I'm kidding. I've had kind of a deep, gravelly voice since I was 13. So I wasn't very big physically when I was younger. So fortunately, I had a deeper voice from a very young age, and I was able to use that to my advantage, sometimes to keep myself from getting beaten up. So it was something that I just worked with. Once I became a voice actor, I worked with that voice, and I was able to control it. At first, when you have a deeper voice, you're called upon to do a lot of deeper, gravelly characters, many times shouting, and a lot of creature stuff. And particularly when I'm doing things like Spike or Vincent or big creatures, where the voice really has to be, crazy. It's very, very stressful. And especially doing battle scenes, I feel like I've actually been through that battle at the end of the day, to the point where my body feels like it's breaking down. So part of the challenge for me was really to be able to control that through the years. And it just took years of experience to be able to monitor myself so that I wouldn't blow myself completely out. It's very easy to do. And even now, I'm still called upon to do a lot of screaming creature stuff. And I will blow myself out. There's no way to avoid it if you're doing it for 4 hours straight. So the original voice was natural, but what I'm doing with it now is so unnatural and very painful. So thanks for that.
Okay, just over here then. Oh, no, we'll take one from this side first.
Hi. Of all the voices that you've done, and there are many, are there any that you've not done that you would really like to do?
That I've not done that I would have liked to?
Would have liked to do.
Well, not really. I mean, I've done so many voices that I wasn't expecting to. I've really been very lucky in my career and continue to be. The one voice that I always thought that I might be right for would be Batman. But then you hear Kevin Conroy and all the other guys that are doing Batman now, Roger Craig Smith and so many of these guys are doing Batman now, and they do such a great job at it. And again, they're all my friends. So who am I to say that I should have a job over them? It really makes no sense in my mind at all. I just thought that it's in my natural vocal range to do Batman, and it would be like a deep. Do Batman? Wow. I am Batman. I don't know. It's hard for me to do that. Although I would say I got to play Lego Batman years ago. In the very first Lego Batman, I was Lego Batman. A lot of people don't know that because I had no speaking roles. It was just And I did get to do a version of Batman years ago with Neil, right? Whatever happened with that? Neil Kaplan, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. I was able to direct an unproduced episode of Batman the Animated Series, and the first person I thought of that I wanted for Batman was Steve Blum, and he was kind enough to do it. And the cast included Richard Horvitz, Jack Angel, Fred Tatasciore, let's see, I think Julianne Busher, and Danica McKellar. So I got myself a great cast, but unfortunately Warner Brothers never gave us permission to use it for the charity. But I will get you a copy of it.
Thank you, I would love that. It was for a submarine thing, right? Or originally? Audio theater for the troops, so.
He was awesome!
For me, especially at this point in my career, I don't do it because of the fame and I don't do it because of the money, and I never started out that way anyway, so just to be able to play Batman, even if we're just screwing around, was enough for me. And to do with some of my best friends, you know, was amazing. It's a dream fulfilled. So for me to even lust after a role that I haven't had doesn't even make any sense, because I've probably done it in one iteration or another.
Okay, just down here at the front.
Okay.
Lord Starscream, hello.
Hello.
I can't hear you.
I can't hear you.
One more time. No, sorry. I've got a couple of quick questions. One of them is, what's the nicest thing and probably one of the weirdest things a fan has ever got you or sent you? And the other one is, across the whole of the Transformers history, what particular character would you like to portray?
Would I like to portray? Well, the first question, I would say that the gifts that I've gotten from the fans have been unbelievable. I've gotten some beautiful pieces of artwork and plush toys and all sorts of things, and I love all of that. But the greatest gift, really, and this sounds sappy, but the greatest gift is really the stories that I've gotten. And the one that kind of changed me on a cellular level was a story that I heard in New Zealand years ago from a family. There was this man who came up to me, he looked Samoan, he's this huge man with tattoos, and he came up to me in my line and he started crying. And he told me that he had a little boy who was autistic and nonverbal. And he would sit in the corner and just rock back and forth and grunt, make noises, and they had enough understanding of his noises to know what he would want, but that was basically all he was capable of vocalizing. And then one day, out of nowhere, he just jumped up, sat on the couch, and Digimon was on. And he started watching Digimon. And the father looked at him, and he said, well, what's going on? And you know, he wasn't expecting any words to come out of his mouth, but the little boy looks over at him and he goes, psh, and he actually shushed him, and that was huge. It was a huge response. It was something that had never come out of this boy before. And then at the end of the episode, the boy started speaking for the first time. And the father said, well, so what is it about this? And he goes, I like him, I like Guilmon, and it was my character. And the father was, stunned that the boy was speaking, first of all, but the boy had so many things to say, and he spoke for like a half an hour straight, just gushing out all of these thoughts and feelings that had been welling up inside him all this time. He just didn't know how to express himself. But something about that show opened up something in that child's brain. And to the point where he brought him to the convention the next day. The boy at this point was about 12 years old, with the whole family, the wife and a daughter as well. And the boy is not only completely verbal, but he's high functioning. He's in school. He's got friends now. He actually is part of this community where he found people like-minded that he could speak to that understood him. And he felt like he had a place in the world. And the four of us stood there, and 4 or 5, I don't know. Anyway, we all stood there and cried. I literally got up from my table and I stood there and cried. And for me, that was the greatest gift I've ever received in my life, much less at a convention. And it literally changed me as a person. And it made me so much more open to coming to conventions all over the world and listening to the stories and people that come up to me that, might be perceived as rude or, smelly or whatever. Everybody's got a story. Everybody comes from somewhere. People have feelings, and it made me so much more accepting of everyone. And so that was a huge, huge gift. Makes me want to cry right now. Just talking about that, it's incredible. So Anyway, the stories that you guys bring me, are the greatest gift of all. And as far as Transformers, what other character would I want to portray? Well, I think everybody dreams of playing Optimus Prime. But you know, when I stand in a room and